Joseph was 93 years old when he died in his sleep. Up and at it one day and gone the next. We were told that we should be grateful he lived that long, but it was still such a shock. Boy, he could be such a pain in the backside. So stubborn, always thought he was right, always having to do things his way. He also gave the best bear hugs and had a cheeky twinkle in his eye, alerting us to his upcoming mischief or a really bad idea or offensive joke. Despite his questionable or offensive, tasteless sense of humor and his obstinate ways, he was always there when we needed him. Despite his know-it-all exterior, he was a good listener when it counted and offered sage advice. Despite the fact that he was 93 years old and lived a long, full life, we still miss him dearly. Shahura was 25 years old when her mother died of cancer. She had finally met the person with whom she wanted to share the rest of her life, and her mother was not there to bask in her happiness. Her mother would not be there when she walked down the aisle. Her mother would not be there to give her advice about settling a newborn or dealing with a teenager. Her mother would not be there to console her when life became intolerable or to share in her achievements and joys as life moved on. Her future children would have no memory of her. It was overwhelming. She was completely shattered. Dave was 16 years old, riding his bike back from his mate's house late afternoon. It was twilight, the time when the light is deceiving. The light turned green and Dave began to cross the road when a drunk driver came out of nowhere and ran the red light, knocking Dave off his bike. He was rushed to the hospital and lay unconscious for 2 weeks. The doctors told his parents that his chance of a full recovery was remote. They were unable to find much brain activity. His parents were not prepared to give up on him. 2 more weeks went by, and his parents rarely left his side. The doctors told them that they needed to make a decision about taking Dave off of life support. How could any parent be asked to make that decision? Flooded with grief for the memories that Dave would never have, mourning the opportunities that had been robbed from him, overwhelmed by the gravity of their decision, and paralyzed by a sense of utter helplessness, they chose inaction and delayed the inevitable. 2 more weeks passed. They screamed and they prayed until there were no more words left. They cried until all of their tears dried up. Then a cold, quiet acceptance of their reality descended upon them, and they were numb. Each of our loved ones who we are remembering here today have been taken from us at different ages and stages in different ways, and yet we share the same noticeable absence in our lives. The Mishnah says, whoever destroys one soul is as if they have destroyed the entire world. Though not its initial context, this sentiment can be understood as an experience of loss, that when a life has been taken from us, we feel as if our entire world has been destroyed. How do we capture our experience of loss? How can we put into words the depth of our grief? Each of us, touched by experiences with our loved ones in different ways, now cherished memories, providing a sacred, eternal, unbreakable connection. And yet, these memories that can fill us with so much love and gratitude can also leave us with so much pain and emptiness. We ask ourselves, how can that vacuous cavern in our hearts and homes ever be filled? Will the pain and loss we feel ever disappear? If we let go of our grief, Will we be letting go of our last connection to our loved ones? How do we move forward without leaving them behind? If only there were answers to these questions. These questions are indeed the plight of the mourner. Webster's dictionary defines mourning as the expression of grief at someone's death, and defines grief as an intense emotional suffering caused by loss, acute sorrow, and deep sadness. Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, well-known Swiss psychiatrist for her groundbreaking work on grief, identified 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Denial is the stage that helps us function when the reality of the loss is too overwhelming and nonsensical. In this stage, we can be confused, elated, afraid, in shock, or simply avoid the reality of the death. Anger, well, that's obvious. Once reality sets in, some of us can experience intense anger around the lack of fairness surrounding the death. She was such a beautiful person. Why her? He did so much good for people. Why did he have to suffer so? Bargaining is the stage when people, even non-believers, bargain with God, saying, if you save my loved one, I will go to shul more often, or I will work less and spend more time with my family, or I will donate X amount of money to charity. Some even go so far as to say, please take me instead of her or him. This is our attempt to gain control over the uncontrollable. Depression, which can lead to despair, is the feeling of utter helplessness and emptiness, which can lead to lack of motivation and social withdrawal, among many other things. And finally, acceptance. This can only happen once we go through the various emotions along grief's journey. Eventually, we accept the death of our loved one and learn to live in our new reality without their physical presence with us. We may not ever like it or be happy with it, but we can accept that and go on. Some may find that death was a blessing for their loved one, despite their personal feelings of sorrow and loss. Either way, we all have our good days and our bad days as we move into the acceptance of our loss. Other theories about grief suggest that people may not go through all of these stages, or may change the order of the stages, or experience some of them simultaneously or more than once. There is no set time frame for navigating the stages of grief, which can leave most mourners incredibly frustrated and feeling helpless. A different theory of grief suggests that the vacuous cavern in our hearts remains forever. Acceptance does not mean letting go of the loss, rather that life evolves and grows around that hole in our hearts as time moves on. Proportionately, the hole, still present, will seem smaller as life becomes full again. Judaism, in its infinite wisdom, suggests 3 stages in the mourning process, which are designed to both acknowledge the emotional process of loss and address the practical realities of continued living. The first 7-day Shiva period, where mourners are encouraged to literally sit with their grief without getting on with it, without having to worry about anything other than allowing whatever feelings emerge to emerge. The next is the 30-day marker of Shloshim, reminding us that life is continuing after a month without our loved one. And finally, Yartzeit, the anniversary of the death. This final stage is continuous, not a once-off. This reminds us that setting aside a time to remember our loved one is an important part of our continued living, that moving forward does not mean letting go. It does not mean losing or forgetting our loved ones. As all mourners know, memories come and go. They can be triggered by a smell or a song or a place, a joke, a taste, sometimes even a look given by another person. These memories are unplanned and often take us by surprise. Sometimes they knock us down and we slip into the abyss of our sadness and loss. Other times they pick us up, give us strength, and guide us forward. As you enter into this new year with a noticeable void in your life, may you travel the mourner's path as you need, at your own pace. And may the memories of your loved ones help pick you up, give you strength, and shine the light, guiding you forward.